Good morning, students. Yesterday we had started looking at the greatness and his teachings and the message of Vardhaman Mahavira. We had also delved into the fact that Vardhaman Mahavir, contrary to the popular perception that yes, he was the one who gave birth to Jainism, is not so true. He, in fact, happens to be the last teacher of in the glorious line of three Thankaras, the 24th one that is, and the first one was Rishabh, and who, by the accounts of many historians and scholars, Rishabh was during the time of Indus Valley civilization, when that is about 3,000 or 4,000 years before the birth of Christ. And the Jains trace their line of great teachers to that point. So we now are looking at what made Jainism special in the sense about their teachings, that they were extremely stringent about taking life, and they didn't want to get into any kind of an activity which would lead to the death of even of the minutest organism. In fact, you would see a lot of Jain teachers who would have a canvas cloth on wrapped around their nose, so that to ensure that even the microscopic living organisms which float in the air all the time, they also do not actually enter their body, or they are not inhaled by them. So that's why they put a canvas cloth on the nose, so that those microscopic living organisms can be filtered out. So that is how seriously they take the issue of non-violence. That is, even something which, even a death which might have been caused, even of the microscopic organisms, inadvertently, that is unintentionally, even that is considered to be something that should be avoided. Now, the world beyond the palace, guys, just like Gautam Buddha, Vardhaman Mahavir also had a very privileged upbringing and a background. Even he came from a royal family, and ultimately, his thinking was very as to why he ventured into this path is also very much similar to Gautam Buddha's. So, the world beyond the palace, just as Buddha's teachings were compiled by his followers, the teachings of Mahavir were also recorded by his disciples. These were often in the form of stories which could appeal to ordinary people. Here is one example from a Prakrit text known as Uttaradhyana Sutta, described how the queen named Kamlavati tried to persuade her husband to renounce the world. In the whole world and all its treasures were yours, you would not be satisfied, nor would all this be to save you when you die, O king, and leave all things behind. Dhamma alone and nothing else will save you. As a bird dislikes the cage, so do I dislike the world. I shall live as a nun without offspring, without desire, without the love of gain, and without hatred. Those who have enjoyed pleasures and renounced them move about like the wind and go wherever they please, unchecked like birds in their flight. Leave your large kingdom, abandon what pleases the senses, be without attachment and property, then practice severe penance, being firm of energy. Students, you have to understand that one of the greatest empire builder of all times in the ancient Indian world, the Chandragupta Maurya, in the later part of his life, he gave all his kingdom to his son Bindusara, and went to Karnataka and lived there all his life, or rather the rest of his life, as a Jain monk, a Jain ascetic, and it is believed that he committed suicide in the complete Jaina traditions. Not that suicide in the way we see it, but Jains have a different way of kind of ending their lives, where they deliberately starve themselves to death, praying through prayers and severe penance, and abstaining from everything that this world has to offer: food, water, everything. And that's how it is believed that Chandragupta Maurya also had ended his life. So naturally, the Jaina, the life and the path of a Jaina is just not easy. The spread, and probably that's the reason many Indians have stayed away from it. The spread of Jainism. Gradually, Jainism spread to many parts of India. Like the Buddhists, Jaina scholars produced a wealth of literature in variety of languages: Prakrit, Sanskrit, and Tamil. For centuries, manuscripts of these texts were carefully preserved in libraries attached to the temples. And in fact, students, if you go to the large Jaina temples, they would definitely have a section within the campus which would have some valuable religious and the philosophical texts which are about the Jaina teachings and the teachings of other Tirthankaras. Now, some of the earliest stone inscriptions and sculptures associated with religious traditions were produced by devotees of the Jaina Tirthankaras and have been recovered from several sites throughout the subcontinent. The Buddha and the quest for enlightenment. Now we again switch over to Gautam Buddha. Now, one of the most influential teachers of the time was the Buddha. Over the centuries, his message spread across subcontinent and beyond through Central Asia to China, Korea, Japan, and through Sri Lanka across the seas to Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. The students, let me tell you one very interesting thing here. I don't know if it's mentioned in the chapter. Guys, whether you talk about China, Korea, Japan, and through Sri Lanka across the seas to Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. Now, it is not that Buddhists were the first from India to take their faith and and interact with the scholars of those countries and those cultures. You have to understand it is not that it is for the first time when probably Chandragupta Maurya or Ashoka, for that matter, they send their emissaries, the religious emissaries, and that was the first time these societies got to interact and get in touch with the Indian, the Sanatan Dharma and the Sanatan way of life. No, it is not true. In fact, there are whole literatures available in Japan whereby a great amount of if you read about the Japanese spiritual world and about the Japanese gods of their different of Japanese culture, the different gods in Japanese culture, you would realize that there is an enormous amount of similarity with the Indian gods and the Japanese. They in that is the tragedy of India today. The Indians don't talk about it, but the Japanese still talk about it. That they readily admit that many of their traditions and practices and their gods they have been taken from Indian culture. It is the same thing with Korea. You'd be quite surprised to know that one of the Korean princes, that is one of the Indian princes, that is she had been married to a Korean prince many thousand years ago, and in fact I remember, because that princess was from the times of Sri Ram. She came from and she was from Ayodhya, from his family lineage, and I remember a few years ago, I think the president or president of Korea, South Korea, he had come to Ayodhya, and he along with his wife, especially to pray and pay homage to Lord Ram, because they have always felt that association. I think association with India, because their ruler, their king, he had his wife was from Ayodhya. So you see, and of course Sri Lanka, we know that yes, Sri Ram, Ravan, and all that association is very much there. And and again, if you talk about Myanmar, of course Burma, you had enormous amounts of interaction because students, the northern. If you go to north of Burma, what is north of Burma? It is Bangladesh today. Now Bangladesh was always a part of India till 1947, right before it got partitioned. It got partitioned. It was always a part of India. So the interaction with Burma should not come to anyone of us as a surprise. In the similar was with Indonesia and Cambodia. In fact, the one of the world's largest temples, and it is considered to be one of the wonders of the modern world, the Angkor Wat, which is there in Cambodia. Now, Angkor Wat is it's huge. Even if you look at your YouTube, it would, the aerial view, it would give you an impression कि यार ये कब खत्म होगा. It is so massive. Now, what is Angkor Wat? It is the temple of Lord Vishnu, right? It's in Cambodia, thousands of kilometers away from here. So you have to understand that it is not that for the first time, though Angkor Wat was definitely formed, not it is not as 2,000 years old. I think it was formed somewhere around 900 or 1,000 year before today. That is somewhere around this 11th century or 12th century, around this period in time. So that is what is to be understood, students, that these were very obvious choices for the Buddhist masters or Jaina masters who wanted to explore these geographies, because you have to understand they could have ventured, they could have ventured, west instead of venturing towards east. They could have gone to the present day Iranian Empire. you know those could have been fertile grounds as well. They could have gone to Central Asia, which is far closer, but they did not go there beyond Afghanistan, right? Because why? Because we did not have such ancient traditions whereby we would be inclined to go into the areas of Turkestan and Turkmenistan and all those places, because traditionally our ancestors had preferred venturing east, and that is the reason why we kind of even when it came to exchange of the Jaina traditions with theirs, or the Buddhist traditions with theirs, we preferred venturing towards eastern part of Asia. So tomorrow we shall continue. Thank you.